Stanley walked around his desk and stood in front of the second cell, out of reach of the moaning men. "Who are you?" They didn't acknowledge the question, just kept trying to grab onto him. "Where did you come from? Why were you attacking that woman?" No response, except more moans. "Aaron, you're telling me that you shot this guy 3 times? Wiping the alcohol and spit from his lips, Aaron turned around. "Yes, sir. 3 times at less than 5 feet. He just kept coming forward, trying to take a bite out of me." When the deputy had arrested McCall at the general store yesterday, he'd been frightened. Now he seemed petrified. "No man could live through that. It just ain't possible. Look at the front of his shirt. 3 bullet holes and 3 more arrows sticking out at the back. The other one looks like someone mistook him for a tree and tried to chop him down." "He ain't no man. Neither of them are," McCall said. "At least not anymore. No one can live through that." A startled look swept across their faces. Stanley recovered after a few seconds and laughed it off. Aaron didn't. "What are they then? Demons? Why don't you leave the investigating to those of us who are still men of the law? We don't need advice from an outlaw in a jail cell," Stanley said. The sheriff knew the one part of McCall's criminal history that wasn't fabricated. He had once been Sheriff McCall before Mad Dog. He'd presided over a sleepy hamlet back east, spending most of his days at one of the few pubs in the area. A caravan passing through on their way to Philadelphia was held up on the outskirts of town. Hearing the gunshots from his perch at the bar, McCall had been able to catch up to the bandits before they could escape. The gunfight was short, with Sheriff McCall putting 2 men down before 3 others escaped. Though he lived in a small town, he'd always been an incredible marksman. The marshals arrived the next day with a warrant for his arrest. He was charged with robbing the caravan, killing its occupants, and the murder of 2 federal officers. As soon as they walked through the door, he recognized 3 of them as the men who'd escaped him the day before. The corruption of the Marshal Service had caught McCall completely off guard. Though he pled his case, they were intent on having his head. After gunning down another agent, he fled, abandoning the life he'd built. It wasn't a week later that his face began appearing on wanted flyers up and down the East Coast. "It doesn't look like he's going to be capable of standing soon, let alone investigating anything," McCall said, nodding at the deputy. Aaron was sitting against the edge of the desk, his hands placed on his knees to support his weight. His body began trembling, shaking the entire desk supporting him. "Aaron?" Stanley asked. Abruptly falling to his knees, he pitched forward, cracking his head against the wood floor. He never raised his hands to protect himself from the fall. Stanley dropped to his haunches beside Aaron, placing a hand on his back. McCall stayed in his cot, reclining against the wall, watching. He'd seen even the biggest of men fall apart after a gunfight, but had never heard of someone having such a visceral reaction. "Come on, son. We need to get you over to Ellis's saloon and have the doc take a look at you." The trembling stopped. Aaron lay motionless on the floor, his uncle kneeling over him. "Aaron?" A moan escaped Aaron as he slowly leaned backward, his black eyes looking over his uncle. "Aaron, what's wrong with—" The young deputy lunged at his uncle, chomping down on Stanley's right ear. The sheriff howled as he fell backward, pushing his nephew away. The combination of his weight falling back and violently shoving Aaron in the opposite direction tore his ear free. Stanley scampered away until his back bumped against the kegs of black powder. His shocked face was ashen gray as he pressed a hand to the gaping hole on the side of his head. Streams of blood seeped through his fingers, coursing down his forearm. Aaron chewed on the ear with slow, deliberate bites. McCall could hear the cartilage crunching. After a large and pronounced swallow, he crawled forward, eager to get another piece of his uncle.